Hello, and welcome to this masterclass on sacred prosperity. It's a masterclass that's been bubbling up inside for a little while and something that I've really wanted to share and haven't felt like it's been the right timing until right now. If you're new to my channel, I'm AJ Alexandra Joy, and I love helping women in business and also leaders in organizations to thrive, not just survive, whether that's in their personal life, their professional life, or how they build their team and culture. And so today we're going to talk a lot about sacred prosperity and what exactly that's all about. So let's get started. First, I would like to take a moment to pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm on, and also wherever you're gathering. So I'm on Wonnarua and Darkinjung land, and I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and thank them for walking with wisdom and really actually showing us what prosperity is all about for themselves, for their tribes, and for Mother Earth and nature all around them. So I'm really glad you're here and thank you for joining me. This is not a get rich quick prosperity masterclass. There are loads of those out on the World Wide Web, and I encourage you to go and watch them if that's your thing. Today, I want to talk about prosperity from a different perspective. I want to remind you it's all about remembering what is already yours and then finding a way to lead in your life in alignment with that. So I'm curious, when you hear the word prosperity, what comes up for you? You know, what is it that you start thinking about? What do you notice that you feel in your core, in your center? Does it have positive connotations for you, or does it have some that are maybe a bit more negative? Where does your mind or your sense follow when you hear the word prosperity? And if you thought of someone or something or a country that was prosperous, what would that mean for you? For me, sacred prosperity is not about luck and it's not about accumulation. So this is also not really a masterclass about manifesting, although that's an element of it, but it's not what it's about. This is not about saying different affirmations every day and instantly you're going to be a millionaire, right? It's more about your awareness, your intention, and then your stewardship of your prosperity and your wealth. And I truly believe that this level of sacred prosperity that I'm going to share with you is, in actual fact, our birthright. And it's what we're born into. And somewhere along the line in our birthing process, we've forgotten that this is actually what we're made for and what we're here to be. So allow me to introduce you to this beautiful scale. So this is the scarcity to sacred prosperity spectrum that I have created. And it's based on some of the work of the beautiful Dr. David Hawkins and his consciousness scale. But it specifically narrows in and focuses on how do you move from scarcity to sacred prosperity, and how might you be able to tell through your own language, your thoughts and your feelings where you're at right now. So you can see on this scale that we begin at the bottom, that shame is the lowest form and is right at the end of the scarcity spectrum. And so shame is where we apologize all the time. This is very much sorry syndrome. So sorry for being late. Sorry, I did that to you. Sorry, I haven't been able to complete this. Sorry for existing, right? And so there's lots of apologizing that goes on at this level. And really, you not only hide your brilliance, but it's completely masked and often is invisible to you as well. The next level up is known as guilt. And this is where we start to see maybe some fruits of our labor, and then we feel guilty for it, either because of our upbringing and what our own ancestors or parents didn't have, or just our own upbringing. And usually it's that 0 to 7 years old, what we've been shown as being true for our life. And so we start to overgive then. We start to rescue other people, right? And want to help others, even though we haven't got our own mask on ourselves. We haven't yet gotten to a prosperous place in our own life, but we feel like we have to give, right? And that there's an obligation to do that. And at this level, there's a fear, especially if you're in business or you're looking for a career or a job, a fear of charging what you're worth and receiving. So I see a lot of women in particular when they start up in a new business in this space where they're afraid to charge what they're worth and what they should be due. They're also scared of receiving. And so instead, we end up with people coming from a place of martyrdom where I have to give all the time until I'm completely depleted and exhausted. And so maybe you can relate to some of that as well. And I know I've dipped here at times in my own life. The next level is fear. And I mean, that's fairly self-explanatory. And what we find is a whole lot of the population actually sits at this level. And this is definitely scarcity mindset. This is that thought of never having enough. And so we have a lot of anxiety around our prosperity. We have a lot of anxiety that makes us want to control everything. You know, I've heard this in clients before where I will hear them often say, I just want to have enough. I just want to have enough to survive. I just want to have enough to live, a comfortable lifestyle. I'm not greedy. I just want enough. And so there's this declaring to the universe over and over again that there's never enough and that I have to hold on to what I've got and that I'm afraid that I might lose that. And then as people start progressing out of that fear and start going, maybe I could have more, they get into this craving space. And what I find today is this is pretty much the doom scrolling space. This is where everyone is online, where they're scrolling through their Instagram feed or their TikTok or whatever channel they're on, and they're looking at other people. They're starting to compare and they're going, wow, they've got this and that in their life. I want that too. They start hustling. You know, there's this striving kind of chasing prosperity. And this sense of if I have more, then I'll become more and I'll be seen as more. And so this real comparison and the scrolling and looking at other people and what they're doing and what they're achieving and look at their car and look at their house and what are they doing now? And oh, they've just published a book. Why haven't I done that? So there's this craving for what I don't have. And so that hustle, and that need to keep showing up and prove ends up exhausting you, right? And so when we're at the craving level, you'll often find people start having adrenal issues or autoimmune diseases because that craving is creating exhaustion. And it's forgetting, right, that I already have divine prosperity, that I'm already enough. And so there's a forgetting of that and a chasing of something external outside. And then moving through that phase, and I find that people actually do kind of step up through the phases. Maybe you're coming in at a higher level already. Maybe you're right down at the bottom and you feel like you've got to work your way up. It is really hard to jump, say, from shame to craving. You do need to kind of incrementally grow through the levels. And what I find is people don't necessarily springboard into another level unless they've experienced like a near-death experience or a really serious prognosis or been in a motor vehicle accident or something that's really been a wake-up call, lost a loved one. And so sometimes you might see people jump ahead a little then, but generally speaking, it is kind of bit by bit. And so when we get to that green level there of force, what we find is that people start pushing, right? We're over efforting and there's a lot of need for control of our environment. And so people in their own business are like trying to get the sale and so pushing for that. And you'll often find when they're making an offer to the market, it feels a bit tacky, or something about it feels pushy. It feels like the salesperson and the cold call. There's this, I need to push, I need to effort, I need to control in order to get the results that I'm looking for. So there's this sense of forcing my way through the door. I think of a salesman at the door, or a woman, and they've put their foot in the door so that you can't close the door, and they're like shoving themselves at you. And maybe if you're on LinkedIn like me, it's that constant kind of people reaching out, and they've just connected with you and instantly they're telling you about this special offer that they have. And it's like, can you take a moment and actually form a relationship first? So that's the real force energy. And it tends to work in the short term and can be a bit tactical, but long term, what it does is actually deflect and push people away. It has kind of an icky feeling to it. And then we see the second green band there of pride. And so this is very much where we get into our dear little ego, and we've all been there. I know I certainly sat in this space for quite some time, and still it's easy to dip there, right? And this is very status driven, wanting to prove myself. So it sounds a bit like force, but it's going that next level where it's very much about shaping my brand, really kind of proving myself, or buying the flashy red sports car because I want to be externally validated. I want other people to say, how cool are you? And so this is where things become important, where the pride is connected to, maybe it's the Rolex watch. It might be because I'm wearing a brand, and you'll see people with their luggage with the Louis Vuitton on it and those sorts of things, because I need to show my status. It's very much in that pride place where I don't feel certain unless I've got all of these trappings that modern life tell me I should have by this age in order to say I'm successful. And so that's where pride is. And the next level then is one that's really, I guess, a linchpin and really important. So if we look at the next level of trust, and so this one I've highlighted because this is the tipping point, you would say, in the scale. This is the tipping point where we go from below the line, from pride down is where I need to force myself upon you. I need to force my way through life. I feel like everything is a chore, everything is a challenge, right? So there's complete force below this. And so trust is this beautiful liminal space in the middle. And in order to get into this trust space requires quite a bit of courage, right? So trust is all about having confidence in the flow, trusting the universe and the process. It's about how can I use my resources that I have at my availability, be their time, energy, team, things. How can I use those resources in a way that is aligned with my truth, and in a way that is in flow, and trusting the flow of the universe? Okay. And so this trust is a very special, important place. And when I see a client get into this trust space, I'm like, oh, it gives me chills, because I'm like, this is it. We're ready to go. Okay. And so we're no longer resisting and forcing and those sorts of things. And as I said, it takes quite a bit of trust. It takes quite a bit of courage, and it actually means surrender. It actually means not that I give up on my dreams, and not that I become like, oh, well, trust the universe, whatever will happen, but that I trust that my intuition was going to tell me the right things and the right ways to go. And that there's this sense of, I'm going to trust the knowing that I have and the nudges that I'm getting. And rather than resist or feel like I have to force something, I'm going to allow it to be. And so trust is a magical place to get to. And then we see all of the levels above. Worthiness is about really having this sense of, I know who I am now, and I know my own wisdom, and I have this sense of worthiness that I'm okay. And so because I'm okay to have boundaries, and I am enough, regardless of what I do or what I achieve or the title that I have. I am enough. So worthiness is this beautiful space where people finally say, I'm enough. And then into intellect. So it's natural that then we get a bit busy with all of this and we get our little mind caught up in it and hooked up in it. And this is a really hooky place for many of us. And I hang out here quite a bit because it's tempting to get into thinking about our thinking. And so intellect is starting to know your value. And so you can show up more visibly. You can do the work, the things that you are meant to do here on the planet with this space of, I know it, I've got the worthiness and now I know it. And now I'll start to gather knowledge and information and things that help me on the way. And so it's a very information gathering kind of space to be, where I look for proof that shows me this is the right thing. I intellectualize. Sometimes I know for me, I can get quite boring in this space. And what I mean by that is I'm still passionate and excited about, everything I'm doing, but I can be boring in that I will annoy everyone and bang on about whatever it is I'm passionate about at the time. And so it's very much an intellectual game of demonstrating that, talking about it, telling it, talking it up. And so we can get really involved in that. And then we start moving into a bit more free flow of dropping from our head down to our aligned heart and our gut. And so this is where we start in our gut, setting intention. And so this intentionality down in the gut is all about doing things more deeply with a sense of intention. And instead of that force that we had below the line, this is where we start to see innate power come through, where we start doing small things with intention, where they're done deeply. And so whether it's making your morning cup of tea, whether it's your morning walk, and that's done in a meditative, intended space, whether it's how I communicate in the workplace and with my team, that I pause and reflect, and I start to become more intentional in the language that I choose, the words that I use. I'm less likely to beat myself up and say, oh, you're so stupid, you did that, right? So I don't have those thoughts as much because I'm conscious and intentional that they're not healthy or resourceful for me. And so instead, I start to have more intentionality about, do I want to go to that networking event or not? Do I want to put more energy into this relationship or this project or not? And so there's a lot more depth in thinking about things rather than just jumping at it or going, that's going to make me look good, that's going to get me $1, that's going to get me ahead. Instead, it's like, is this aligned with my truth? Am I going in the right direction? What's my gut telling me? And so there's a magnetism that starts to happen when someone's in this space of intention. And if you've met someone, you'll know that you get this sense of their spaciousness when you meet them, if they're in that level. And then we drop from our gut and our head and we come to the center into our beautiful heart. And we start to just become a living, walking love bubble. And I don't mean that in a romance love way, but I mean that we start channeling love energy. And so everything we think, say, and do has this beautiful energy around it of love, of, I bless everyone I see. I bless the universe as I walk around. I love my life. I love the opportunities I have. I love the hardships. I love the challenges that I get. How can I bless and pour more love into the world? And so these people are just like this beautiful blossom walking around. And so they bring sunshine to a room. They bring sunshine to a team. You feel seen and heard and witnessed when you're around someone who's in that space of love, and you kind of want to jimmy up next to them. You're like, oh, I want to spend more time with them because they've got this beautiful energy and vibe. And then we move into stewardship, which is something that I've been delving into, researching, exploring, see the intellect drop in, feeling my way into, spending time walking country with elders, really to come into more of an alignment and an understanding of stewardship. And this is where we start to really move, although in love, our radiance starts to move outside of our body, and you can actually measure it. If you look at monks and people who meditate a lot, their heart radius is actually quite large and outside of them, and you can measure their heart waves, you know, from outside their body. But when someone's in stewardship, they're really having a bigger vision than just their own life and themselves. And they're starting to see that there's something greater in the world. There is an energy and a force and an opportunity to be of service to others. And so this sense of stewardship is, how can I escort others on the journey? How can I bring more people on board? How can I support those around me and the company I'm in to rise up as well? And so there's this real sense of thinking about beyond, about how will this impact the next 7 generations? What is it I could do today? And what are the trees I could plant today that I may never sit under the shade of, but I know that it will benefit future generations? And so stewardship is something that is of great value in our own lives, but also in the lives of others. And so when someone gets to this level of prosperity, I would say that no longer do they need to seek, strive, try to earn a living and those sorts of things. What you typically find is that that's all just forthcoming and is energetically kind of attracted to these people, that people say, I want to pay for you to do that, or to come here, or to spend time and support us, and those sorts of things. So the actual need to chase and earn money really goes away at this level. And then we see people at the level of presence, and it's a rare space. And I would say not many humans get to this level. I would hope that maybe I do in this lifetime, and if not, maybe in the next one. But it really is a level that is uncommon, I would say, and is only really ever achieved by great beings and people that you might look up to, such as, you know, Mother Teresa or the Dalai Lama, or someone that might actually start to achieve this level. And you know, there might be some of them in the world that aren't visible as well, because they, whilst it's presence, they actually don't have much presence in the world, because they're not out road showing and speaking, and they're not out doing that. They're quietly holding the energy and the space for the planet in, I would say, less visible ways. And so people at this level of prosperity are just deeply rooted in their sense of being, and they have this regenerative influence where everything they touch moves and progresses and grows and flourishes. And there's this easefulness to them, this easeful impact. And anytime I've met anyone that could be in that love, stewardship, presence, those last 3, they tend to have almost a childlike playfulness to them. And I'm thinking of one amazing gentleman from India that I've met several times, Sri M, who wrote a great book called Apprentice to a Himalayan Master. And when you meet him, there's a cheekiness and a delight in his eyes, and he can discuss the depths of very serious world things with you, and in the next breath quote a Dr. Seuss book, and you know, have a giggle about how much he loves certain foods. And so there's just this lightness to them. They have this influence that just tells you things are going to be okay, and they move through life with ease and grace. And so when you look at this scale, and as I said, it's based on Dr. Hawkins' scale, what I would say is that at the bottom, there's a lot of resistance. So if you think of a beach ball in a pool and trying to hold that down, there's a lot of force against it. But above the line, it's like floating. It's like the resistance is gone. So this scale and spectrum really just shows less and less resistance to coming home to your sacred prosperity and what is your truth. And so I want to invite you now to think, where do you find yourself most often? When you look at that spectrum, where do you see your own life and your own practices? And what kind of language do you hear yourself, whether that's out loud or in your own mind? And what do you want to shift to next? And remember, it's very difficult to shift and jump several layers. We usually just go one at a time. And so thinking about that, where do you want to shift towards? What's the next step for you? And how might you pick yourself up and notice the language that you're making? So speaking about Dr. Hawkins, this is his scale, to give you an idea, and his is a logarithmic scale, and he actually measures it through kinesiology and muscle testing on a scale of 0 to 1,000, which is enlightenment or God's consciousness. And his is essentially all around the emotional states that we have when we're at different levels. And so you can see the correlation here to scarcity, to prosperity mindset. And that really at the bottom, we suffer and we struggle and everything feels difficult and paying the bills feels like a challenge and there's never enough to go around. And we think, I've just got to make it to the next payday. I just have to get this thing done. My car's broken down and now my fridge blew up, and it's like everything seems to happen all the time because there's this real suffering that goes on. And that's not to discount or discredit that is the reality for us as humans, and that's our mission here on earth, is to learn through these challenges. But it's how quickly you bounce back, how much you sit in that struggle, or how you start walking yourself out of there. And so sacred prosperity emerges as we start to lead our life and lead others through those higher states of worthiness, intention, love, and stewardship. And so when you've moved from the hustle of the below the line, the holding the beach ball under, and you're starting to get into the flow or the presence above the line, it means that you're shifting your consciousness and that you're choosing paths of less resistance, right? Because whenever there is that challenge or struggle, it means that there's a lot of resistance going on. And it's up to us to question, what am I resisting? Where is the resistance? What's that coming from? What's that stemming from? What are the beliefs that I might need to challenge around that? And so there's 4 principles that I believe can start to help us form some thought forms and some feelings and being around sacred prosperity and how to shift out of maybe some of those lower vibration frequencies. And so I'd love to share these 4 principles with you and help you walk your own way through them and consider and reflect on your own journey and where you might be at in regards to them. And so the first one is tuning into flow. And so this is really starting to have a lens that looks for, where is there flow in my life? Where is there flow in the world? And so this is recognizing, where are the opportunities, right? Where are they moving through and aligning naturally? And how can I bring those in and move into flow in the river rather than trying to force outcomes? And so I'd love you to consider, do you have any examples of where you've just arrived at something naturally, where you've had an epiphany or things have aligned and you've gone, oh yeah, like, duh, I could do this. So really think about, where do you find that in your life? And, for me, I think I've found that along the way in business, where I have launched things, created workshops, done different things, and found that it felt like toil. It was hard work. And even though I loved it, it was still hard work. And I felt like I had to go and resell it and keep selling it. And everyone I spoke to, I tried to squeeze them into the mold of whatever this thing was that I created. And instead, when I started to tune in more and sit with clients and just hear them out and listen to the words they were using and where they were at and the language that they spoke and what it was they were looking for, I then found, oh, I can actually create something specifically for them that responds to what they're saying without it needing to be so controlled and like, no, this is my program and you have to buy it this way and it's 4 payments and it has to look like this. And so recently I found in my business, it used to be I had year-long programs. And whilst I have a lot of clients that come back to me year after year, and I've got people that 10 years later come back and say, I want to work with you again. And so I have a lot of repeat business. And what I found to be tuning into flow is that rather than lock them in and say, you're in a contract, it's a year, whether you like it or not, I tend to work instead in a natural flow way now. And I found that people like challenges, or they like, I want to just do a short 4 or 6 weeks. I need to focus on this thing happening in my life right now. And can I just do that with you? And then they might go away for a month or two until the next thing comes up. And then they're like, okay, can I come back now for this? And so rather than me going, no, it's a rigid thing and you have to meet with me every month and you have to do this, it was learning to respond to them and their flow in their life, and to be ready to support that when it was ready. And once I did that, I could let go of a lot of the control and the feeling of forcing things and those sorts of things as well. And of course, the prosperity and the money flowed then. And it felt less like taking money from people and more like people exchanging and gifting me for helping them resolve something. It just had a far more light and joyful energy to it than someone who was on a payment plan and had to pay something, if that makes sense. And so I want to ask you, where is the river already flowing in your life or work? Where is it that even though I'm in this role, I'm being asked a lot of advice and opinions over here, and maybe that's a bit of where my flow is? Or, what are the things that I love to do, like that are in my flow? And also, if I'm in business, why create and recreate the wheel when someone else over here who could be an ally has got a fast flowing river, and they've got more people than they can handle and more work than they can handle? So instead, could you support them in their river? And so I have a colleague that I work with like that, and he has quite a fast flowing river, servicing some corporate clients. And I jump in and out of his river, supporting him when he has overflow and spillover from his river. And it's joyful and it's easy. We have a very similar style. And rather than me fishing and trying to create my own river, I just jump in and out of his as he needs. And so I'm of service to him, I'm of service to the clients, and I don't have to chase any of that. It just flows to me. So tune into the flow, start listening for the clues. Where are opportunities showing up, and notice, am I resisting because I am trying to control and make it all fit my exact mold? Yeah. So that's number one. Number two is having a seasonal strategy. And this is understanding that life is seasons. And this is what probably in my mid-30s led me to burnout, was not understanding this principle of sacred prosperity. And so my season was always harvesting. It was kind of harvest, just trying to do that, and not realizing that sometimes there are seasons of planting and then nurturing and fertilizing. Sometimes there's harvesting, and then really we do need this rest season. And when you think of it, I live on the land and plant a tree every day and have orchards and those sorts of things. And what I know for sure is nature has her timing and her seasons. And it's really important not to keep plowing the field and forcing the, planting and harvesting over and over. And so ancient farmers knew that they had to, every 7 years roughly, leave the land fallow and give it a rest and let the nutrients do their thing. And so I do things like I plant wattle, which is fast growing, and then every 10 years you cut it and let it lay on the ground, and it puts lots and lots of nutrients into the soil, and it then allows new crops later to be really rich and to help the soil gain lots of nutrients that it needs. And so when you look at that 7-year cycle in agriculture, it's not much different to how we live in our life. And you often hear of the 7-year itch, which is where actually, rather than chasing the next thing or leaving a relationship because now it's not working for me, it's probably a signal that you need a season of rest. And when you think about, for a lot of people, and maybe this is for you in your career, maybe you've just been running on the treadmill the whole time. And that's certainly what I found in my 30s. Was I had just been pushing that below half in the scarcity part of the spectrum. I had been pushing so hard that my resting season was forced upon me by my body saying enough. And maybe you've experienced that in your own life, or perhaps you're getting close to that now. And so I want to encourage you to think about, what season are you in? And rather than lament and wish that you were in harvesting when you're in planting, rather than worry about that, instead, could you be in this place of sacred prosperity, which is knowing that I'm in this season and it too shall pass and I'll move into the next season? And can I honor the one that I'm in? I know for me, I'm just about to move out into a planting season. And so I'll be doing some resting and then some planting around my next books that I want to write, and the next chapter that I want to pursue and align with in my business and my company. And that I need to have a spaciousness in order to meet the right people, to have the energy and space for those. And so I'll be moving out of my harvesting soon and entering that rest season. And I'm looking forward to planting the seeds of the next chapter. So where are you at in your seasons? The third kind of principle of sacred prosperity is multiple streams of nourishment. Now, I know people say multiple streams of income, but I like to think of it as nourishment. And so just like we need a healthy ecosystem, and in our ecosystem, we need, quite a bit of variety. I think I had some bird observers give me some advice on the property and the trees I was planting here. And they said that the bird life I was getting was all too much of predatorial kind of birds and bigger birds. And they said, your ecosystem's not healthy until you have a lot more of the small, dense shrubs and plants that are little spiky bushes and things that all the little wrens and finches and the tiny little birds can live in. And so I've been intentionally planting those kind of plants. And what I'm seeing is the ecosystem becoming more diverse. And every day I'm delighted at seeing all of these little red finches and wrens and lots of little tiny birds starting to come around. And I see them in the gutters of my house, drinking water and those sorts of things. And so it's a sign that even though I still have eagles and black cockatoos and kookaburras and things like that, I'm now starting to see the smaller bird life. And so what does it mean for you? Are you just got your job and that's it, or your business and that's it? Maybe you just have one stream of nourishment for your life. And so it could be your income streams. And for me, I have property and investing in property, which I've done for over 25 years now. I had a career for a number of years where it was working for others. And now I have my own business. And so I generate cash flow through the work and the things that I put out and the value I bring to the world. And then I can channel that into investments. So I also have, I invest in precious metals, and I also invest my time in, I'm on a number of boards. And so I volunteer on a number of boards for organizations and charities that are meaningful to me, whether they are to do with helping organizations thrive, whether they're helping women escape domestic violence, and also Indigenous organizations and supporting our First Nations people to come back home to their sovereignty and to support them in their journey forward, using the wisdom from the past as they move through the future. And so in lots of ways, my multiple streams of nourishment come from all of those things, from walking country, from weaving and doing things by hand, from planting my trees, through walking with my dogs, through exploring on my motorbike. And then my income stuff comes from my work, my creativity. It comes through workshops and programs that I run. It comes through workshops that I do in corporates. It can come through speaking engagements. And so there's multiple streams of nourishment coming. I don't just rely on one source, because quite often, as we know, a river can dry up. And if that's our only river, we start digging deeper and panicking that that river's drying up. But if we have multiple streams of nourishment, we can switch and have a season in a different river or a different flow, move to something else. And so I really want you to think about what additional streams could you start to create or explore. Could you, create your own t-shirt brand? Do you make jams for people locally? Could you volunteer somewhere that gives you nourishment? And that might give you other connections and things that add value in some way. So really starting to think about, if you've only got one stream, we tend to hold on to it tighter because that's it. And so we want to have opportunity of following the rivers and the flows wherever they are, and not shutting ourselves off from all of those opportunities that are out there. The fourth and final kind of key to sacred prosperity is living your legacy. And I often hear people talk about, are you going to leave a legacy? What's your legacy going to be? Write your obituary, and what will people say after you're passed away? And I'm kind of like, why leave it when you could live it? So instead, how could you make choices today that are going to impact in a positive way future generations and the planet? How can you do something today that something in the future will thank you for and will be grateful for? And so living your legacy is thinking with that future. It is really being in alignment with your soul and making choices that are good for you, good for others, good for the planet. And that could be tiny little tweaks and simple things that you do. It could also be avoiding burnout if that's happening for you in life right now, and thinking about, the choices I'm making today, perhaps of striving and overworking, how is that going to impact me and my family 10 years from now? I see it a lot in couples that I coach that are in business together, and where I see maybe something that they're inputting into the business now, or a resentment is starting to build, and they're not naming it and they're not working with it. And so I can see the future impact of that could be a relationship breakdown, or you see it in the behavior of their children because their children aren't getting the attention and nurturing that they need right now. And so quite often when we're in the scarcity mindset, we're chasing shorter term things, because it is that instant gratification, instant satisfaction, instant, I need to feel safe, I need to feel safe, I need to feel safe. And so we tend to have all these short-term things going on. Whereas living your legacy is thinking about the future and then acting now based from that future premise. And so I wanted to share some ideas just for an energetic practice, for some embodiment around these principles, and, just encourage you to think about and feel into where you're at in this space right now, and where are you resisting. And so I'm going to invite you to close down your eyes for a moment and kind of maybe wriggle around in your chair until you find yourself in a comfortable space, and just take a moment to breathe and allow yourself to be breathed. And so sitting comfortably, feet on the ground, hands in your lap, and just noticing your breath, allowing your tongue to drop down from the roof of your mouth, and just feeling your feet on the floor for a moment, and imagining that from your feet you have these incredible roots that come down and through you like mycelium into the earth, dropping down into the earth's core. And that whilst you're dropping down and connecting to the earth, at the same time, those roots bring nourishment and good food, fertilizer back up into your body. And so then there becomes this reciprocity or loop of nourishment. And as you're allowing that exchange to happen, I want you to visualize any inherited scarcity patterns, any inherited scarcity beliefs, things that have been put upon you, whether that's from your family, society, the culture, workplaces, friends. Notice any of those scarcity patterns. Where do I feel like I've never got enough? I'm never enough. I have to chase. Things are hard. I need to hustle or push. I need to compete. Notice too any patterns that shut you down or make you feel like I have to conform. I have to do the right thing and be a good girl or a good person. I have to comply and be complicit. I need to stay in the lane of restrictions. I could never charge that much. I could never own that. I will never be enter the blank. And so as you're imagining and allowing those to come up visually for you, those inherited scarcity patterns, I want you to see those also dissolving into the ground, composting into the soil. And you're going to let Mother Earth, Mother Nature take those away. Let them drop down, sink in, go below the surface. Let them be cleansed and fertilized and moved through all through the earth. Compost that stuff out that you no longer need. And once that composting process and you feel like I'm moving through, I can name those things, I'm sensing what's going on and I'm letting them go. Once you're at that place, I want you to sit straighter in your chair. Take a deep breath and breathe in your sovereignty, your knowingness, your birthright. That no longer is scarcity part of my story, but instead this sacred prosperity was always mine. It was always there. I was born with it. I just forgot. And sitting up straight, allowing a light, a golden cord to come from the universe, from God, from source, from whatever you deem is your right way, to allow that to come through the crown chakra of your head and to create this golden flow of prosperity that starts to ripple throughout your body in a steady, rhythmic, energetic, alive way. Feel that pulsing through your body, this radiance of golden light coming through this strand, and that it flows and flows, and that the river of prosperity is coming with it right through to every nook and cranny of your being. From your fingertips to your toes, to the crown of your head, to the tips of your ears, to your chin, that this prosperity you already had, and it's just calling it back in. That you allow it to flow and pulsate and warm your body and warm your soul, and remind you that I am above the line. I do deserve to have that courage, to have that faith of being, so that I can sit in the presence of myself, and that I allow the prosperity of the universe to really come in and be in my space right now, because it's already in me. And then repeating after me, I receive in rhythm. I prosper in presence. And I lead and am whole as myself. And just allowing that to resonate and ripple throughout your body, to take root and to remind all your cells that you were born this way, to even allow a smile to come to your lips, to feel a gladness in your heart, and to feel a truth in your gut and your soul. Taking a couple of deep breaths and just really locking that sense of presence right in, right here, right now, because you know that this is your truth, this is your birthright, this is where you're meant to be, this is how it's meant to be, this is who you are. And then gently reconnecting here and opening your eyes. Thank you for joining me for this conversation with your soul. I want to remind you that prosperity is not a finish line, that it's a river. And all you need to do is find your place in its flow, to listen to the river and all of her signals, to align with that flow, and to trust and jump in and then go. There is no pushing, there's no more judging, there's no more doubting. Sacred prosperity is for all of us. And if you're curious to know how else you can flow in the river or jump in the river that I'm in, I have a beautiful container called Leading Ladies International. It's been going, it's probably 9 or 10 years now. And that's a group specifically for like-minded women who are career professionals who are looking for something extra, shall we say. So reach out if you want to know more about that. And the other thing that I'm super passionate about, and I'm watching a bird just fly at my window right now, hello, what a sign, is steward eldership. And I'm in the middle of writing a book about steward eldership, and about to launch a whole heap of little challenges and little lessons and learnings with myself and other teachers and people who have got wisdom to share. And it will be a number of smaller challenges that are all around practices of steward eldership. And people who participate will get their challenge passport, as you can see here, and can dip in and out of the different challenges that interest them, depending on what's going on. And so it might be living your legacy. It could be learning custodianship and walking country. It could be learning to use your voice and speak as a sacred act. It could be fire practice. And so if you're interested in finding out more about this, please join the waiting list. You can email me, aj@alexandrajoy.com.au, and ask to be added to the waiting list. And we'll be sure to forward you some information as each of those challenges are unveiled. And I'm trusting the flow of the river and the process for those, and they will be partially online, and there will also be live retreats on country. So most people will be able to just participate from wherever you are in the world, and they will be deeply rich and personal and very much about sacred prosperity. And so I want to thank you for giving up, choosing an hour of your time to be spent thinking about where are you at in that scarcity to prosperity flow and where you are on the spectrum. And I encourage you to be open to exploring what's next for you without judgment, without fear, but to have some of that middle ground of the courage to trust and to surrender and to move into a place of flow that is already yours. Thank you for being part of this process. Much love from my heart to yours.